school boards, and um, so I appreciate that. Also, I just put in the chat the CDE website link. I know they've come out with some new FAQs on the quarantine update, independent study. So a lot of information on independent study and staff shortages. There's going to be, from what I was told, there's going to be some more updates in the next couple days as well. So I encourage you all to continue to check the CDE website for information. Obviously, if you don't find something there that answers your question, you could always reach out to your superintendent or to my office if there's something that you want us to drill down deeper on. So, Tara, why don't you go ahead and be the point person since you're my ledge director? Why don't you put your email in the chat? That way we don't have seven. I have a bunch of staff. Dominic's here, Declan's here. From my office, and Christy Lopez from my office. So Tara, put your email in the chat. So if there's things you want to drill down deeper on after this call, don't hesitate to reach out to them. And all of you have relationships with my field deputies as well. So I wouldn't, dial them in as you see fit. As you all are dealing with every day, what we just heard from, a board member on, a kid got exposed and so rippled to one of us. So the COVID is something that affects all of us. May not affect us all directly, but indirectly, just about all of us have been dealing with it for the last couple of years. And as I was talking to one of the budget staffers today, asking a couple questions, her response over and over again is, "We're doing the best we can." And I think that's the message. All of you care about the kids that you're serving. I care about the kids you're serving, and we're all trying to do the best that we can. Obviously, the budget this year was the biggest it's been in history from a financial perspective per pupil. As you all know, the incentives to reopen our schools, to try to help do it as safely and efficiently as possible. I'll go through the budget numbers in a little bit. I know that as Trustee Chen mentioned, mental health has been on the forefront of what I've tried to do this year because the toll it's taken on our kids has been significant. Even all of us have been touched by it. Watching my own daughter, who was a senior when this all began, she lost her senior year and then she lost her freshman year. And so, watching her play far more video games than I would have ever wanted her to play, but it was a way she could stay in touch with her friends because they could all play together. So it was one of those parental things where, I was happy she was having some peer-to-peer contact, not excited about the method, but at least it kept her plugged in with her peers, and now she's off at University of Redlands. So I know all of you have a story to tell about your own kids. So one of the things that I had discovered and, we worked on last year, which it didn't happen, but this year was just passed, was making sure the mental and physical health get treated the same way. As far as approved absence and the stigma, if you have a cold and your parents write a note that you were absent because of cold, that's an approved absence. But if it's anxiety or depression or other forms of mental health, that's not necessarily an approved absence. And so we sent a bill last week to the governor, and it's an urgency matter, which means the moment the governor signs it, it becomes law. We anticipate his signature. And one of the frustrating things I had early on in the conversation is one of the editors of one of the large newspaper groups said, "Well, what happens if a parent lies?" And I said, the fact that you asked the question underscores the reason why we have to have the bill, because you don't assume the parent's going to lie when they say Johnny has a cold. Why would you assume the parent's going to lie if they say Johnny is home because of anxiety or depression? You went right to the stigma and not to the heart of the matter. And so that's on the governor's desk. It had a mental health first aid component, which I know none of you like the word mandate, but there was money in the budget to pay for it, which was to require school districts to actually train 50% of your personnel to be equipped with seeing the warning signs of mental health issues, suicide. Unfortunately, there was serious opposition from CTA and the chair of the Assembly Education Committee, and he stripped that out of the bill, which is really unfortunate because we had money in the budget to pay for the training. And Tara, wasn't there an email saying he was against training? I mean, I don't know how anybody in this day and age could be against training. We want everyone to be, don't you want the firefighter to be well trained, the doctor to be well trained, the teacher to be well trained? I don't know, I do. And so we're going to take another run at mental health first aid. And when we had the hearing, there was a dad who called in and said, my 14-year-old daughter turned in her journal as her English assignment, got an A on her journal, and then 2 weeks later took her own life. And he
Oh,
was in tears,
oh,
but brought me to tears because he said, I don't blame the teacher because she wasn't trained to see the warning signs of suicide in my daughter's journal. He wasn't
oh,
mad at the teacher. He just said, we need to make sure that teachers are trained to see those warning signs,
oh,
which were written in the journal. And so that's the point. If we're
oh.
not trained to see the warning signs, we're going to read more about more tragedies. And so I tell you that story that I'm not done with that bill, and we need to make sure that we work on the grassroots level and get our local teachers to say that this is something they want to be trained in. And it's not just teachers, it's 50% of all school personnel would be trained in mental health first aid. The other thing that we put a bill on the governor's desk is on mental health curriculum. We're going to require school districts to teach mental health uh, age appropriately to our elementary school students. And again, as all of us with teenagers know, they make great advocates for themselves when they don't even know what they're talking about. Can you imagine how they would advocate for themselves when they're actually armed with information? And so we're going to teach students about mental health so they can be advocates for themselves and their peers. So that went to the governor. The other issue that I was very frustrated with is dyslexia. We have a bill again to do a quick dyslexia screening in schools in first grade, second grade. It's 4 times cheaper to intervene in first and second grade than it is in eighth grade. And it's 3 times easier to intervene in first grade than it is eighth grade with dyslexia. And there's a huge social justice component. There was a study out of Texas that said 7 out of 10 inmates in a particular prison were dyslexic. Learning to read it equips you to succeed in life. And again, it's an issue that knows no demographic, knows no socioeconomic status. When I introduced the bill, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, yeah, I wasn't diagnosed till I was in the ninth grade or the 10th grade. No one knew I was a dyslexic till I was in high school. And if we can screen those folks at risk for dyslexia, and again, we had opposition from CTA on the bill, and the chair wouldn't let us have a hearing on it. So very, very frustrated, but not deterred because it's the right thing to do. And with a governor who's dyslexic, there was money in the budget to pay for it. And so that's why it made absolutely no sense not to do a 30-minute screening for the risk of dyslexia for all of our students in our schools. So I try not to do too many mandates because I know your dockets are full, and I try to prioritize things that can be funded and also have a big bang for their impact. And a 30-minute screening is something that we could all accomplish with our budgets that would have exponential benefits. Obviously, ethnic studies passed this year. It doesn't get implemented until 25-26 school year. And I believe the governor's going to sign it this year. So that's going to be coming down the road. It does have a local flexibility in it. And I use 3 examples of that. If you're in San Pedro and you want to teach about Portuguese fishermen and how the Portuguese community was central to life in San Pedro in the early days of California, you should be able to include that. And if you're in the Central Valley and you want to include the role of Filipinos, uh, that played in farming in the 50s and 60s, you should be able to do that. And if you're in Glendale and you want to talk about the Armenian genocide as part of ethnic studies, you should be able to do that. And so we allowed local education agencies to either adopt the state's model curriculum or to create their own ethnic studies curriculum. And I think that's a step forward. There was a lot of misinformation floating around with it both last year and this year, and I think this is important. There were some folks saying that the charter schools were exempted. That was not the case. What was changed in the bill is, again, I go back to the Assembly Committee on Education, put some requirements around gym classes in for charter schools that had nothing to do with ethnic studies. We took that out of the bill, not the requirement to teach ethnic studies. So you all should know that when folks say charter schools are exempt, it's just not true. It was the gym class piece that was taken out of the bill. And then there were also some guardrails put around the prior rejected versions of the ethnic studies curriculum. As you know, the state took many years to get it right, and there were some versions that were viewed as anti-Semitic. And so we put guardrails and said you can't use those portions of the rejected criteria, the rejected ethnic studies that are bigoted and anti-Semitic. Seemed like it made good sense because we didn't want folks to use the local flexibility to then teach anti-Semitism. And so we worked with the Legislative Jewish Caucus on those guardrails. And again, there's a lot of misinformation focused around there. We did not change the ethnic studies, the approved ethnic studies curriculum that came out of the IQC. We just put guardrails around the prior rejected versions that should not be taught, and they were rejected for a reason. And so I think that's important. Obviously, AB 104 created some opportunities for parents and teachers and school districts to talk about impacts on learning loss and how that affects students. I don't know if you all had your superintendents and your legislative teams look at AB 104, so they can. So that's an important bill on repeat parents who want to have their students repeat and pass fail legislation. So you should all look at AB 104. And then I don't know if all of you have been brought up to speed on the COVID outbreak response teams, but the state did authorize response teams that can come to your district. Do you all have, I mean, I don't know what has filtered to you as board members. Are you all familiar with the outbreak response team? I don't see anybody saying so. Outbreak response team were designed to provide rapid response to sporadic localized COVID outbreaks. It's a mobile response van that you can summon. And so if you can't find out information, let us know. I think it's on that link that I sent you. So that's available. That's a resource if there's some outbreak that needs to, a rapid address. Tap into the rapid response team. As far as the budget goes, y'all know we, total of $6 billion to help you get open. There's been a lot of emphasis on independent study and homeschooling. I know that a number of the districts have raised that issue for this call. My understanding is there's flexibility in there that some people like, some people don't like. As again, there's always folks who want us to be more prescriptive with you, but we've tried to empower local districts to offer things and not require things. And so if there's more information on that you want us to go to, let me know. I know during our Q&A, somebody's going to take notes. We also paid off the deferrals, $11 billion of money we owed you, which was, a decade in the making. And so that was good news. I see Yvette Kim just joined us from the School Boards Association, my old staffer. Just go through some of the highlights. The per pupil spending is $13,976 in Prop 98, and then $21,000 when accounting for all funding sources. That's the highest in the history of California. We've also tried to have more intervention and focus on special education. So special education funding got a significant increase. The Prop 98 Rainy Day Fund is still with us. LCFF got more money. Universal Transition Kindergarten got a ton of money. Comprehensive student support. There's $3 billion available to expand and strengthen implementation of community school models to all school communities. There's $140 million of money for regional technical assistance centers across the state to help you. There's $30 million to work with local partners to coordinate and provide direct services to students. There's $547 million to help with A through G. That's something that prior to the pandemic was an issue, that some school districts were having trouble implementing A through G requirements, which disproportionately disadvantages students who are trying to go to the UC. And so we're trying to make sure that we do better with A through G. The budget put 1.8 billion in investment in multi-year plan to expand full year instruction and enrichment for elementary school students with a focus on local LEAs with the highest concentration of low income students and English learners. So those of you with English learners and foster youth, there was a bunch of money put in place to help our foster youth, workforce prep, nutrition and free lunches. Got money, and then of course special ed got 450 million to provide learning recovery support with students with disabilities. I know the distance learning in particular was significantly impact on our special needs students. Anyway, I could go on. I got pages of stuff, but I'm sure your superintendents have done a better job giving you all the details. But I really want to hear from you, because what I'm being told from the state, and this is true, we have tried to adapt as the COVID circumstances adapted. We've tried to provide flexibility where we think flexibility is warranted, and we've tried to provide incentives. I have no doubt that when we go back in January, there will be more bills, more trailer bills, more bills that are to try to deal with some of the positive consequences, unintended consequences. I know the hold harmless issues. A number of your superintendents have contacted me about extending the hold harmless on ADA for a longer period of time. I have no doubt that those conversations are going to continue. I'm going to be on the 5-star meeting next week as well to hear from your superintendents. And as you know, every time you guys send me a memo, I send it directly to the budget staff. And we've been successful in getting some of the stuff that have been concerned. So for me, today's is a chance for me to hear from all of you about what's going right, what's going wrong, and what you want us to drill down on. So that's a little bit of an overview. So thank you. I probably talked too long. I apologize.
Thank you so much, Senator, for that legislative update. Certainly from school board members, we're seeing and reading a great deal of I think pressure on school board members, to quote unquote do the right thing, whichever side you're on, whether it's vaccine mandate or mask mandate. And there was a recent article in Political that was just mentioning how the public is seeing school board members as a way to access government and local government and really testing their own patience on these school board members. So I really do appreciate this time, maybe for the school board members, to articulate some of the challenges that you're seeing, and how certainly from the senator's office how the state can be helpful.
Who wants to go first? Kim Kenny.
I just want to clarify, you were talking about the COVID safety teams, and I think you said it was in response to an outbreak, and an outbreak has a particular definition, right? So it's not, oh, there's a couple cases, right? I think outbreak is very specific.
I'll read you what the flyer says. COVID-19 outbreak response teams are designed to provide rapid response to sporadic, localized COVID-19 outbreaks that fixed testing sites may not be equipped to support. This is available to all K-12 schools, public, charter, and independent. The definition of, so that's what this says. And they can be deployable in 24 to 48 hours. And then if you want me to continue, it says, what is needed from a school district? A reliable single point of contact, information about the outbreak incident, including location, date, preferred deployment location, the outbreak, the team can go, and whether vaccination services are also desired. How to request. Schools should first reach out to their local health jurisdiction if they believe they are needed support, and then the jurisdiction can help facilitate a formal submission. So that's the fact sheet. but it says sporadic. That's one of those specific words, isn't it? Sporadic.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it is. We also have some parents on this call, and as well as a couple faculty members. But I also like to just acknowledge Becky Chung, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff, who is here from Congressmember Judy Chu's office. So thank you, Becky, for being here as well.
Becky, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Senator. Thank you.
Say hi to the Congresswoman and Teresa, say hi to the Congressman for me.
Okay, will do.
You.
Who else has a question? Josh.
So it's been a little catch as catch can as far as student vaccine mandates district by district. Obviously, LAUSD is a big one, and Culver City, and I know there's there are legal challenges to those. I guess I'm wondering for those of us that are smaller districts, it's a harder step to take at this point. Do you see any movement in the legislatively in the near future on student vaccine mandates?
Well, the reality of it is we finished last week, so the earliest the bill could be introduced would be January. And I don't anticipate there being a special session between now and January. So I think you need to operate under the assumption that this year, unless the governor does an executive order, I don't see a legislative situation in the near future, to answer your question.
Do you think there's an appetite for it starting in January? Like, is that something?
I think there's an appetite for consideration, but I think people are also, I think everybody's an eternal optimist at this point. I think people are hoping that the herd immunity and masks and other things continue to show success. So I don't think there's a rush to do that. I just don't see that. But again, as you pointed out, it's a district by district decision. Because each of the theory would be each of your districts better than us, and you're all of different sizes and scopes and also have different levels of herd immunity. But the calendar is a artificial barrier that's real. The earliest the bill could be introduced would be January. Joseph.
You're on mute, Joseph.
First of all, I'd like to appreciate Senator open for this channel to all the school districts. I want to share about the life experience since the last year. The COVID-19 just happened. I think I want to suggest maybe the Sacramento should take a more proactive status to help each school district on the COVID-19 issue. I remember the last year when we closed the school, so I think each school district had to do their own. Even we closely maintain the contact with LA County Health Department. So they give us the guidance, but later when vaccines come out, so I, on behalf of school district, and I contact LA County supervisor, but they are not in the role to help the school district employee to get a vaccination. So finally, I contact the USC K Medicine, and then we have a joint effort, San Marino Unified School District with South Pasadena and La Canada. Finally, the K Medicine CEO decided they will do the vaccination on the 3 school districts, the staff and the teacher. So I mean, for this very important issue on the life, I think the Sacramento maybe health a Department of Education that should take a proactive role to help, to decide who will get the priority to get a vaccination. As you know, we heard probably on the November, maybe the age below the 12 vaccination will come out. So we hope the Sacramento can help each school district quickly and to distribute the vaccine, and so then each school district kid that can get the vaccination, and then I think will relieve the parent and also the teacher worry.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, for me personally, I think everybody that's eligible should be vaccinated, and I think the availability of the vaccinations, we don't have a shortage of vaccines at the moment. So anybody, can get a vaccine tomorrow. Obviously, there's a segment of our society that is, promoting false information and conspiracy theories, and I hate to, the anti-vaccination movement, is not helping. But so I encourage everybody to do what you can to encourage your communities to be vaccinated. Same thing on wearing masks. I mean, I had somebody come up to me and say a mask is killing more people than COVID. I mean, that's the crazy nonsense out there. That just, to me, the fact that a mask became political is ridiculous. A mask means you love your neighbor. It just means you care. It means it just means you love your neighbor. It's not political. It's an effective way to keep the spread of the virus. And so, that being said, those are my personal views. We've tried to be respectful of the school districts themselves. We've tried to hit the sweet spot. We've tried to provide resources. We've tried to provide as much as we can to empower school districts to open safely. And it's not a shortage of resources or information or availability. And so if the age gets dropped from 12 to 10, that's for the doctors to decide, not for me. But I would encourage, families to take their younger people to get vaccinated when it's determined to be safe and effective. If I had an 11-year-old and all of a sudden 11-year-olds could be vaccinated, I'd have my 11-year-old vaccinated. I was happy when my daughter's college started vaccinating on campus. And immediately last year, towards the end of the year, she went and got her vaccination. So that's just those are my personal views. Tina?
Well, thank you, Senator Portantino, for your time as usual, and everyone else who showed up here. You've been very generous in advocating in education. And I'm so glad I really appreciate you trying to destigmatize mental health. Honestly, my own daughter was having a very hard time this past year. And we also struggle with the stigma. So thank you so much for that effort, and really appreciate the extra funding that the state has come through for us, paying off the deferrals. That's really helped us. And I've been in other meetings with other school board trustees, and Joseph here, I've seen in TSBA meetings, and it does seem that this is going to be an ongoing challenge, beyond this year. So I'm glad you think that, this legislature is going to make things more flexible. And I hope you continue to support us through the COVID challenges. I did hear actually today on NPR about, this minority of people can put out misinformation. And it has even a few people can have a huge impact on misinformation, disinformation. So if there's any way the state or can support or can combat the misinformation, disinformation, I think that actually is really helpful. It's not just about, having the, enough supply. That's great. We had enough supply vaccines, but there is a very insidious effort out there to deter people from getting, they have doubts, right, about getting vaccinated. And actually, I'm going to be proposing a resolution on our school district to put out facts. As a district, we're going to put out the facts. You can't get COVID by getting the vaccine, or the COVID's not going to change your DNA, all that stuff. Like, we need to be at the forefront of facts and leading on the facts and putting it out there. So I hope there's also an education element or campaign to combat that. Once, I have an 11-year-old, we're waiting for that approval of the vaccine for her. And it's not enough just to have it, available. We have to combat the misinformation out there.
Right.
And it's real. And,
No, it's real. It's
and
without a doubt.
And the culture war is happening in our school boards. Yes, we're in a different world now, and somehow it's exciting. It's dramatic in our school boardrooms now, unfortunately. And the struggles day to day are the staffing, and the teacher shortages, and the overcrowded classrooms, and just the fluctuations of quarantine, and the kids now have to be at home, and then those teachers now have more kids, so we need that flexibility, but we also need more staff. And if there's any way to lower the threshold of getting more staff, or providing supports like aides or tutors, and I guess there's the money there, but also where's the supply of people is another question. So
Well, the structural workforce shortage is really a big picture that we were struggling with prior to COVID.
I know.
And that's where the community colleges play a significant role. That's going to continue to be a structural issue, which is why I focus on education so much, because for me, if we create an educated workforce, it just exponentially helps across the board. But you're right, there's job shortages significantly. And we just have to get more kids through the system as quickly as possible to meet those demands. I did see, Jane, you talked about the dual immersion. So I do have a little information. So the school board members may not like what I'm going to say, which is okay. Kim, it won't be the first time that I said something that people didn't like. But doing a little research is, so because we're holding harmless on ADA,
Yes.
districts and parents can do inter-district transfers on a subject. And so in theory, you can pool with surrounding districts. If going back to if there's not enough Spanish teachers to do dual immersion in one district, you can work with neighboring districts through the inter-district transfer process. So that's something that all of you school board members could try to work with your parents on. Also, the County Office of Education can be the umbrella too for a regional approach.
That's right.
For the dual immersion program. So again, if there's only one teacher that teaches math and Spanish, and there's 40 kids, but they're in 6 different districts, working with the county office, I've been told that you could work through the County Office of Education to be the umbrella, or you can facilitate an inter-district transfer. Reasons why school districts have been resistant to do the inter-district transfer is because the ADA money follows the kids. But during COVID, since we're holding you harmless on ADA, there's no loss if you give the inter-district transfer. Did I explain that? Did I make sense, Kim? Because you know this better than I know.
So to clarify, we're benefiting from the hold harmless this year, but the hold harmless of ADA was we didn't count ADA last year in 2021. So this year we are again counting ADA. So we do care. We care very much if we get money while kids are out on quarantine, which is why the districts really, really need to get them into short-term independent study. And it's a lot of work, which is why they're unhappy. But this year's ADA counts, and this year's ADA is what will be funded on next year. And that's when the fiscal cliff is happening. So we already have a little bit of a drop off, because this year we're using 1920 ADA and no one can 2021.
But if you facilitate a regional approach, I don't think it hurts your bottom line. That's what
If
I'm
they're
being
not
told.
at our district, they won't count
That's
for
what they
us.
say.
So, and that's probably why people are asking for another hold harmless. They're saying,
Right.
please don't make us use the ADA from 2021, but that's not currently the law yet.
And I think that will be discussed. But what I'm saying is I do think it warrants a regional look at, because of the shortage of teachers in different languages, school districts have an opportunity to work collaboratively if they don't look at ADA as the barrier. And I think if they work through the county, then there's not even an ADA implication. There's only an ADA implication if it's a Monrovia teacher teaching a Pasadena kid. But if it's through the county, then I don't think the ADA is affected. So all I'm saying is, if we put on our creative hat, there
Yes.
are two viable solutions to the dual or the immersion programming that I don't know if you guys have looked at. So when I was asking the question,
Maybe
I knew
not.
I knew this question was coming up. So Jane, I was prompted. So I'm not this bright off the cuff. So Dominic told me this question was coming. So that's what I found out. So there are two potential solutions
Very
that you
interesting.
guys. Who was that? Was that you, Elizabeth?
Yes,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah, so you guys can look at those two roads, working with the county or working with your neighboring districts.
That's fantastic. Thank you for coming up with solutions, whether they're on the fly or not. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Who else has an issue? Kim had your
I have
hand
a
up again.
question.
Oh, Elizabeth. Go ahead,
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Oh, you mentioned that there is some funding to strengthen the A through G requirements for the ability, the capacity, so that our seniors won't be stranded without their full roster of A through G. What are some of the ways that are acceptable to spend that funding?
All right, I'm looking through my notes. Give me a second.
Mhm.
Hold on. Give me a second.
Yes, I'm wondering if the funds could be used for adding faculty or strengthening the
So
faculty.
here's what it says. It says the budget provides $547.5 million one-time 98 general fund for the A through G completion improvement grant program, which will fund high schools to increase the number of students, particularly students eligible for free and reduced lunch, English learners, and foster youth who graduate from high school having completed the A through G series of classes required for admissions to the Cal State University and UC system. The pandemic made completion of these classes more difficult for many students, and the extra support that will be provided to them with these resources will help them get back on track. That's a definition of what happened, but it doesn't tell me how to access it. So, Tara, make a note that we should find out how a district can access this 547 million, and then get that to all the districts.
Thank
Anthony,
you.
I think it's available. Well, I think each district will get 2 pots, but we had to do a plan that was due by January, but the trailer bill that you guys just passed last week changed that due date to April. So I don't know if that means we'll get to spend it before our plan is due, or we have to wait until we submit our plan for it.
All right, so we'll get some clarity on that.
While I have the microphone, I want to say thank you very much for this dyslexia bill, and please stay on it. I think this is something that would help us tremendously in getting more kids to be reading at grade level by 3rd grade.
Absolutely. Patrick O'Donnell is out to lunch on it. He just won't he is just he. Tara's shaking her. I mean, he wouldn't even give he wouldn't give a hearing because he knew I'd get every vote except his, and so that's why he refused to give it a hearing.
Do you
And
want
then-
us to send this video to him, Anthony? Just kidding.
You should talk to every relative he has, and it's just terrible. I mean, I can't, it's very frustrating that one individual can hurt so many kids.
And I want to say thanks for the mental health as well. Before I started on the board, we had a required health class for graduation in Pasadena, and then it fell by the wayside due to budget cuts. Then we brought it back, and what we encountered, it was hard to staff, and it took us a little while to find really good teachers who wanted to teach a health class to high school kids. And I think we were finally getting kind of there, and then we cut it again. But what we found is that it really was meaningful to the kids. It wasn't just physical health. It wasn't just nutrition, but it really could get into the mental health stuff. And a lot of things that the kids valued having a place to discuss, issues around mental health, around hurting themselves, around bullying, around, just developing as a person. And, in our graduate profile, we talk about, the healthy body and the healthy mind. And I think those really go together and are important. So I'm still hopeful that someday we'll have a dedicated health class come back as a graduation requirement. So the more pieces we have to teach, the more likely it is. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that today, this is not a shocker. Today's kids are more sensitive. They just are. And I know, La Cañada High has its wellness center, and my daughter volunteered there, and she took it very seriously. It wasn't just a thing to do. And they really do care. They look out for each other. They I don't know what has changed in the water, but they're just more sensitive than we were. One could argue whether that's good or bad. I mean, I tend to think it's good, but we have to change with the times.
We also have a couple parents on here. So, before we leave, I'm cognizant of the time. I know we have a 5 p.m. hard stop. Octavia, some of the parents on here, do you have any questions or any comments?
And if we don't get to your questions, you all see me around town, and none of you are shy.
No, but thank you so much. This has been really informative. So I don't have anything, but I really appreciate your time.
Caroline, you've been quiet.
I'm just listening. Josh already asked my question, so.
There you go. And I know, San Marino, the independent study has been a big issue for you. I know that's been something that my research shows that the word shall offer doesn't say must. So there is a little flexibility in there on some of the issues. I don't know if that's helpful.
Jane, you're very well versed on this. Jane's she's on her first term on the San Marino School Board, so wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
How's my buddy Shelley doing?
Oh, she is unfortunately not on this call today, but she's doing great. We had a board meeting yesterday that I've been describing as blissfully dull, where we were able to get a lot of work done. And that kind of is like the bar now that we're all shooting for, right? To get the work done without too much drama and excitement. But no, our independent studies, I think for us, it's a lot of the same challenges everyone else is facing, which is trying to figure out how to do it effectively within our budgets and staffing. Staffing, I think, has been a big issue in making sure that we actually have enough people. And then because the kids are continuously moving in and out of independent study, the number keeps shifting. So it's this constantly moving target. for us. And, between K to 12, there's very different needs. So I think now that we're coming out of sort of this first few weeks of school, a lot of the focus is turning to instruction and the quality of instruction our students are getting, both in person and for independent studies. So that's kind of where the conversations are starting to move. Thankfully, I think those are
Right.
good conversations.
And I think there's sort of a little bit of a divide in those families that were traditional independent study families versus those families that are independent study because of COVID, new arrivals. There's sort of a disconnect between how they see it. Those folks who have used it for years don't want anything changed, and those folks who are in it now want more definition. And so I think that's also complicating the issue a little bit, is you have those two perspectives. And again, we're trying to hit the sweet spot with the engagement and the enrichment and the accountability and provide a little modicum of flexibility. So that's an area where, as it unfolds between now and January, get feedback to me for those ongoing conversations, because there's going to be evolving regulation as all of this pans out. So I think that's my overall message is, don't look at all of these things as static. I mean, obviously what happens on Tuesday happens on Tuesday. And we can't change what happens on Tuesday, but as it evolves, we can look at what we can do come next year to make it better.
I guess one question that kind of leads us into this then is there going to be continuous tweaking at the legislative level of the independent study policies? Because we had what we existed before, and then now we have this COVID independent study mandate, but is there any indication of where we're headed after 2021-22 school year?
What the staff told me today is that a lot of the independent study issues have sort of quieted down, that a lot of it has been worked out, because they were surprised that I was asking the questions, because so I would say that if the trend continues that what we've done is being successful, I don't see massive changes. But if something gets red flagged, it's a conversation that could continue come January, is what I'm saying. A lot will depend on the feedback we get.
Tina?
Thank you for the second turn. We really want this COVID roller coaster to be over. We want to defeat COVID, Delta, and we don't want to do this again, right? And there is a number, I think, associated with whether we can defeat it. So you talk about herd immunity. We have to vaccinate enough people. And I believe something like 75%. I don't remember the exact number, but enough people have to be vaccinated for us to defeat COVID. So if you think about schools and you think a child going to school, their reality is that campus, that school, that classroom. And their reality is what percentage of the people, students, staff in that school are vaccinated? I can't answer that question. I want to. I want to make sure that we're going towards that herd immunity, whatever that number is. It's not 100%. We're never going to get to 100%, but we have to vaccinate enough people to defeat COVID. So my question is, what can the state do to get us closer to that, to actively get there? So right now that there's no requirement to say, this school has this percent vaccinated. We don't know. I'd like to know. I'm a parent too. I have kids that I've sent to school. So again, our goal, I hope as a community, is to fight and win and defeat COVID. So, because we don't want to do this again.
Well, I would say, obviously right now you have to be vaccinated or you have to be tested. If you're out of school, if you're an adult out of school, you have to be vaccinated or tested. I believe the state's, saturation rate of vaccinations is significantly on the positive side. And I think, each school district has the ability to set its own policies, which, is something that many of you have wanted, traditionally to make those decisions. So we're providing the resources, the incentives, the education, the mandate on the school personnel, and as I said, I personally am pro-vaccination. I mean, I think, it's the right thing to do. But we're trying to make sure it all works so we don't have this problem. And as you all have talked, there are people who work against us, which is part of the problem.
Yeah, and we appreciate that Governor Newsom came through, and thank goodness Governor Newsom prevailed. That Governor Newsom has the vax or test policy. But again, this is a fact and a science that herd immunity is achieved through a certain percentage. So we can say test, which gives people the out to get vaccinated, but ultimately we want to achieve a goal. And maybe the state can just say, hey, herd immunity is achieved this percentage.
And the PUSD could say it as well. I mean, there's the.
Okay, well, we both.
What's to stop you from doing it?
Let's say we all can. We take all the opportunities we can.
We've tried to take a pragmatic, incremental approach based on science, and I think we've done a good job. And I think the results of yesterday show that the public thinks the governor's done a good job as well.
I mean, to be fair, Anthony, though, I know you've seen it, but it's hard to take that stance at a meeting right now. Like it's not a great place to be when you're trying to, when you're going out on a limb, especially. I know Pasadena Unified is bigger than us, but these meetings are hard. They're really hard right now, and mandates from that are district specific are really tough. And so, the support of the state is incredibly helpful to us because it sort of gives us more justification. So we're certainly in support of all the help we can get.
And I don't want to tell you that there's going to be a mandate tomorrow when there isn't. I mean, that's the challenge I have right now. We don't go into session until January. And that's just the reality. And so all I can give you is my personal views that everybody should be vaccinated, but I can't say that there's going to be a legislative mandate because no one knows what's going to happen in January. And I can appreciate, as I said in the beginning, you guys all have the most difficult job, without a doubt. You're interacting with moms and dads and grandparents every day who want their kids to be healthy and happy, and they're looking at you, and you have the one parent who thinks their kid's going to be healthy and happy if everybody's vaccinated, and you have the other parent in the chair next saying the vaccine is terrible and they don't want their kid to be vaccinated. So you're getting hit from both sides. I can appreciate it, and I just don't want to overpromise.
Joseph has a question.
Well, I think with a mandate on the vaccination, I think because we are the unified school district, so we have from K to 12. So the worry I have, the age below the 12, no matter what, so far they haven't got the vaccination. So they are a risky group. So like me, I think every day I'm paying attention about the 2 elementary school in the San Marino Unified School District. Right now, I don't really worry about the high school because I think the vaccination rate, I think probably only go back to 75%. But entire the 2 elementary school, there's no vaccination. Actually, it's a high risk. But so I don't know is that we can this moment temporarily before the vaccine come out, then we can focus, the more mandate on the elementary school.
Well, obviously, the more we can do to make sure that more and more of the folks on campus are vaccinated is important. And you're right, with the
But it's not available right now.
Right, with the age difference, it's just not available. That's why, frankly, the masks are our second best line of defense, or actually could be the best line of defense. Where we need to encourage wearing masks. I emceed an event the other day and I wore my mask the entire time, just to send a message that, I was going to wear my mask. We were indoors. We need to set those examples where we can.
You know this the true story. My son working in the USC hospital, and one of attending physician get an infection from the kid from the school. So right now the not just the kid get the COVID, and
Right.
the attending physician also get the COVID-19.
Right. No, it's, that word unprecedented has been used way too many times, but we are, there was no playbook when this happened. And, not every decision has been perfect, but every decision has been made with the hope that it would be the right decision. I don't think anybody's made a decision saying, gee, I'm going to make this decision and, don't necessarily think it's the right one. Everyone has had good intentions from the local level through the state level. And I think that's, this has been a good conversation because we've all been focused in on the reality and trying to come up with a game plan going forward. So I appreciate the conversation. And again, Tara, throw your email in the chat so it's lower in the chat so people have it if there's follow-up questions. We can try to drill down on what we haven't answered. And Michelle, are you still on 5-star?
I am still on 5-star.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be at 5-star, I think, next Friday.
Well, and I do have a comment that I wanted to make. It's about how the legislation comes down and it's put on the school districts to enforce, and it puts us at odds with our parents, the unions. And I'm just concerned about that. If the governor wants to mandate something, why doesn't he just mandate it? Why is he leaving it up to the school districts to determine how they implement something that, he gives them an option to mandate or not?
Now, I think you've seen the approach. People would say to me, why is LA County stricter than San Bernardino County? I had a boarding school in LA County that couldn't open, and there was two boarding schools in Santa Barbara County that could open because different county health offices had different approaches to COVID. I mean, I think you've seen that Governor Brown used to call it, subsidiary. That was his theory, that, decisions made at the smallest level is the most efficient place. So I think that was the philosophy that was part of this conversation from the early days of COVID, is to allow the county offices of health. Pasadena had its own health department, and there was a time where every other city in LA County was calling me saying, how do we become part of the Pasadena Health Department? Because they liked Pasadena's health department better than the county's health department. And so there was this approach to try to create criteria, try to send out the funding, try to incentivize where we wanted you all to go, but to empower it to be done on the county, the city, and the school level as the most efficient example of that theory of subsidiary. And one can say that was not the approach. And Josh, you'll appreciate this because, Joe pulled me aside, a year and a half ago saying, you got to help us. You got to tell us. We can't leave it, so that was been the push and pull. And so we've tried to hit that sweet spot. And, in some places we have, and in other places we haven't. In some places you like the flexibility, and in other places you don't. And all I can say is this has been an evolving situation. It may get to where, God forbid, we're, in a deeper crisis. It may get to the point where, we take a different tactic. But right now, it's been trying to find that sweet spot between state and local control. And different people can argue both sides. So, as the folks I talked to earlier today said, that we've been doing the best we can, and so have you. I mean, everybody. None of you are doing this for the glory. It's it's a hard time and a hard job, and we're all going to be telling our grandchildren about it, and they're going to be shaking their heads and thinking we made it all up, and they won't believe us that we didn't make it all up. So,
well, certainly, thank you, Senator, and thank you for this. I mean, even at Pasadena City College, we were ready to get back into in-person learning at 80% capacity in August, and we switched back to online learning in September because of the Delta variant. And we have 4,000 students that registered their vaccination card to show that they are vaccinated, ready to get back on campus. And so we have many disappointed students, this semester. And we're looking ahead in spring to see if we can bring more students back onto campus. But again, that really depends on where the variants are going to go. And it's been, like some of you said, it's been up and down. But what's been consistent, and I think everybody can agree on, is an intention that we want to do the best for the students and for the families that are counting on us to do the best. And certainly I'm just very honored to be here with, my fellow colleagues, because it's not an easy job. And I'm glad I'm on the community college board and not on the school board. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And certainly thank you, Senator Portantino, and your staff members for being so responsive to our concerns and the issues.
Thank you, Sandra, for bringing us all together. I appreciate it. This has been a good challenging dialogue. And I'm glad Kim was here to keep me honest.
Great. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Be well. Be well.
Thank
Be
you.
safe. None of you be shy. Keep Tara's email, and we'll continue to see each other.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much,
Bye-bye,
Ed.
everybody.
Bye.